Good morning. Welcome to Weekly Astro. I'm Gina Piccolo. I'm going to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. I have to say, this is one of my favorite weeks of August because we have so many kind of yummy, positive alignments. So let's get into it. Okay, just stand by here. Going to get my my notes here. So we're on the heels of that Aquarius full moon. So there is still this kind of settling and integration that's happening. There's also the sun squaring Jupiter, and that perfects or becomes exact today, which is quite exuberant and gives us this kind of burst of enthusiasm and spirit and possibility in a sense that, you know what, things might work out after all. There's a really good news alignment happening on Wednesday. That's that Mercury trine Jupiter, just as Venus is about to have her second square to Uranus. So something unexpected, something even startling in relationship or finance or your value systems pops up again for consideration. And this could be really exciting. You know, it could actually be a little bit like a pop of experimentation or creative reinvention, a breakthrough even. It could be a breakdown. You know, whenever we've got Uranus by hard aspect, we want to be mindful that people are going to act a little bit unexpectedly, particularly when we're talking about, oh, there's a beautiful butterfly. Particularly when we're talking about Venus retrograde and relationships. So, you know, you might want to be aware that people might act in sudden, unexpected ways, but it is still Venus. It's Venus in Leo. There's still this kind of excitement and bubbly enthusiasm that could reach a peak of, you know, some kind of interesting breakthrough. Now, this is the second time that we've had Venus in Leo squaring Uranus. The first time was back in, let me quickly find that, July 2nd. So something that came up around July 2nd might come back around this Wednesday for a little bit more information, or a little bit more integration of whatever the change that is being asked to be made. Because there is a square aspect generally means some kind of action needs to be taken, or some kind of event is taking place in your life. So it's something that requires your attention, and it may not necessarily be something in your control. Okay, so this is something that is in process because it started back in July. We get this second activation on Wednesday. We actually get a third activation of this September 29th. So this is something in process. The other thing going on Wednesday, that Mercury trine Jupiter, this is another thing in process because Mercury is going to retrograde. So when we have retrogrades, that means that any aspect that is happening when that planet moves into the degrees that it will then appear to move backward in, that's going to come back around. So we have Mercury trine Jupiter on the 9th. We will have Mercury trine Jupiter again on, I think it's September, right around that same time that Venus squares. Hold on one second. September 20. Oh, here it is. September 4th. We have Mercury trine Jupiter September 4th when it is retrograde. And then we have Mercury trine Jupiter a third time, September 25th. So here's what that means to me, that something that is good, something that feels like good news, or that is a refreshed perspective or a renewal of faith, pops up on Wednesday. And you're like, damn, that's great. This feels good. I feel like we're moving forward in a positive way. I didn't have to work that hard for this good news. It's kind of like, you know, something that is improving a situation, a perspective that is uplifted after a period. Remember, last 2 weeks of July, even the first couple days around that full moon were tough because we had that Virgo, Pisces, Mars, Saturn vibe, which was very pessimistic and hard. And so having this same alignment in, you know, involving Virgo, Mercury is in Virgo, is going to help, is going to feel really good. So we have this first activation on Wednesday, which feels like the beginning of some good news, some happy development, some positive perspective shift that when we get into that first week of September is going to need to be tweaked. So it's going to involve the retrograde, the Mercury retrograde, still trine Jupiter, still positive, still uplift, but needs some kind of tweak or improvement. And it feels to me like this is the beginning of a 3-act play of improving a situation. And that situation is the Virgo Taurus situation in your life. So when we go into the horoscopes, if you're a member of my Patreon, you will see that is the area that you're going to see the good news, the uplift, the shift of perspective, the improved, finding the resources to improve a problem, maybe a problem that came up in late July, maybe a problem that was absolutely impossible to ignore in late July. So this is all good stuff. So we also have the moon in dignity this week, which is really lovely. And I did a quick little post, was it yesterday, about tracking the moon as a way to prove astrology to yourself. Something I've used myself when I have my doubts, but the moon is the fastest moving heavenly body in the astrological system. It changes signs every 2.5 days. And when the moon is in a couple of signs, it's in its peak powers. And if you're part of my Patreon Astro School, you know, we've talked about dignities. Well, the moon is going to be in dignity this week twice. So it will be in the sign of Taurus, when we start Monday. That's a stabilizing influence. That's a feeling of comfort, a feeling of things are good, stable, calm. And you'll have the moon in Taurus Monday, Tuesday, and a little bit of Wednesday. And then we have the moon, we'll spend a couple days in Gemini, which is kind of fast. So you might notice the pace of life picks up a bit Wednesday, Thursday, even Friday. Friday night, the moon moves into Cancer. That is its home sign. So again, that's a nice vibe. It just feels like the comforts of home, of family, of, you know, a sort of feeling that, you know, you are emotionally, I mean, on the one hand, moon in Cancer could bring up some feelings, but there's more of a availability for that vulnerability, more of a availability to process any emotion. And the moon on Saturday will trine Saturn and then sextile Jupiter. So the 12th is, so this is the other really lovely thing about this week that we're moving into. Once we get into Friday, you start to, well, I'd say Saturday, the Venus retrograde begins to apply to what's called a cazimi. And that is when the Venus moves into what's called the heart of the sun. That's what the ancients called it. Cazimi is the heart of the sun. It exalts, right? It exalts, which means it is far more, the goodness of Venus and Leo is far more accessible. I think that's especially true because the sun is in its home sign of Leo. So we're going to have this feeling of, again, the exuberance of Leo, the feeling, a celebratory vibe, a feeling of access to the good things, to the pleasures, to feeling appreciated, even feeling like seen, validated, wanting to celebrate, wanting to be out there socializing and being part of the party or the conversation. So that's Sunday, but we are probably going to start to feel that on Saturday. So, you know, there's a lot to look forward to this week, particularly since we've been through kind of a hard period astrologically, kind of a turbulent, emotional, I don't want to say discombobulating, but just kind of exhausting and draining. Even that full moon in Aquarius, which did have some benefits to it, still full moons can take a lot out of us. Okay. So what else do I want to say about that? So that's pretty much the week. Just to sum up, integrating the change of that full moon and what that meant to you, a feeling of renewed faith, of optimism, good news, a refreshed perspective, even a big idea, some kind of startling revelation in relationship. That's the Venus square Uranus, creative breakthrough. Maybe you meet someone serendipitously. You know, that's Venus square Uranus. Could be that you, and this is where I would caution those of you who maybe had a recent breakup, when that Venus retrograde squares Uranus, that person might show up again suddenly. Maybe you're out and about and you're like, oh, there's my ex. Just something to keep in mind. And then healing vulnerabilities, fraud complexes, insecurities. I didn't really talk too much about this before, but on the 12th, the sun is going to trine Chiron, which is also retrograde. We've talked about the Venus retrograde with the Chiron retrograde and those being in trine alignment by sign, and there being a lot of availability for healing parts of your own fraud complex, of building a lot more self-compassion, appreciating your own creative gifts and contributions. And that might emphasize around that 12th. But I'm very much looking forward to next weekend. Even today we have Sun square Jupiter. So, I just want to say this is a week that I feel like we have some turning points that feel positive for a change. And we feel like, one of the headlines that I have from my presentation in August was good news, serendipity, and recovery. And for those of you who are not part of my Patreon, if you want to watch the whole, I think it's almost 3 hours, honestly, with the horoscopes, you can join that Patreon for $6 per month and get access to a lot of astrology. You get weekly horoscopes, which I'm going to jump off here and do, and you will get the monthly also. And I'm also doing the next Astro basics course I'm going to start creating this week. I believe I'm going to set the date for that on the 16th, the new moon, but I will be letting those of you who are part of my Patreon will know well in advance. But my Astro Basics course, the next module is going to be on houses. So if you're somebody who struggles to get your arms around astrology, because it is a lot and it can be kind of overwhelming, on my Patreon, I have already posted the first 2 modules about planets and about signs. And then there's also 2 practicums that I did live with my members, and we went over charts. It's a really good, simple, approachable way to kind of learn the basics of astrology. So anyway, if that's something that interests you, the link to my Patreon is in my bio. Check it out. I hope you all enjoy this astrology this week. Set yourself up for a perspective shift to good news, to serendipity, giving you some support this week, because I really feel like that's available to us. All right, I'm going to hop on over to my live link here, and I will see you guys in a couple days. Probably be posting some other stuff later. Bye.